The telegram reached Eleanor Whitcomb at 11 minutes past 6 on the morning of November 18th, 1903. The boy who brought it was soaked through. Rain ran from the brim of his cap and made a dark crescent on the carpet of the Whitcomb house. Behind him, the front doors shook in the wind. Eleanor saw the words before she was ready to understand them. Morning Star disabled off Widow's Point. Rescue crew out. Passenger list includes Mrs. Rose Lindholm and son. For 7 years, Eleanor had told the town of Bellweather that she no longer had a daughter. Now her daughter was somewhere in the black water of Lake Michigan, and Eleanor did not know the name of her own grandson. She read the telegram twice. Then she folded it along its old crease, though there had been no crease before, and said, "Have Mr. Bell bring the carriage." The messenger stared at her. "Mrs. Whitcomb, the harbor road is half under water." "Then tell him to take the hill road."
"The hill road lost an elm."
Eleanor looked at the boy until he remembered that people in Bellweather did not tell Eleanor Whitcomb what could not be done. "Yes, ma'am," he said, and ran back into the rain. Only when the doors had closed did she look down and see that she was still wearing the gray silk wrapper in which she took her early coffee. One slipper had come loose at the heel. She had spent 30 years making certain no guest ever saw her unprepared. That morning she crossed the hotel lobby in her nightclothes while 2 traveling salesmen, a night clerk, and a chambermaid watched her pass. No one said a word. The Whitcomb house stood 3 streets above the harbor, high enough to see the lake in fair weather and high enough to hear it in bad. The lake did not sound like water that morning. It sounded like iron dragged over stone. By the time Eleanor came downstairs again, she wore a black wool dress with a high collar, a fitted coat, and the small jet brooch she had worn since her husband died. Her hair was pinned so tightly that it pulled at her temples. She had forgotten her gloves. Martha Vale, the housekeeper, waited beside the front desk with a shawl over her shoulders. Martha had been with the family 22 years. She had seen Eleanor give birth, bury a son, bury a husband, and send a daughter out through the kitchen door. In all that time, she had learned when silence was service and when it was cowardice. She had not always chosen correctly. "I will come with you," Martha said. "No, you should not be alone. The hotel is full. See that the breakfast room opens on time. Eleanor." Martha used her Christian name so rarely that it seemed to strike a wall between them. Eleanor buttoned her coat.
"If Rose is brought ashore,"
Martha said, "she may not want to see only you." The words were carefully spoken. They still cut.
"If Rose is brought ashore,"
Eleanor replied,
"she may see whomever she pleases. And if the boy is brought first?"
Eleanor's fingers stopped on the last button. The boy. Her grandson. Rose had been 22 when she left Bellweather with Jacob Lindholm. Eleanor had learned of the marriage from a Milwaukee newspaper sent by a cousin. She had learned of the child's birth from a Christmas card that her late husband Amos had thrown into the parlor fire. She had seen the blue edge of the card curl before the flame took it. "A boy," Amos had said. They named him Peter. Let that be the last we hear of any of them. Eleanor had stood beside the mantel and said nothing. That silence had lasted 6 years and 11 months.
"If the boy is brought first," she said, "I will tell him who I am."
Martha's face changed, but before she could answer, the carriage drew up. The wind caught the front doors as the porter opened them. Rain burst into the lobby. The lamps flickered under their glass shades. Eleanor stepped outside. The lake had taken her daughter once, though not with water. She would not let it do so again without having to face her. The Bellweather life-saving station had been built of yellow brick and pine at the north edge of the harbor. On ordinary days, children came to watch the crew drill with the beach cart. Women waved to the surfmen from the boardwalk. Fishermen stopped at the open door to trade weather signs and insults. That morning, the station looked like a church after a disaster. Families crowded the equipment room. Wet coats hung from nails. Boots left muddy water on the floor. The great surfboat was gone, and so were 7 men from the crew. A blackboard beside the inner door carried a list of those believed to be aboard the Morning Star. Eleanor found Rose's name halfway down. Mrs. Rose Lindholm, Master P. Lindholm, age 6. Below them was another name, Mr. Jacob Lindholm. Eleanor stared at it. Jacob was alive then, or had been when the passenger list was made. The room shifted slightly beneath her feet. A hand closed around her elbow. "Sit before you fall," a woman said. Eleanor pulled away by instinct. The woman did not appear offended. She was perhaps 45, broad-shouldered, with silver beginning at the front of her dark hair. Her black dress was plain and shiny at the seams. A wool scarf covered her head. She spoke with the flattened vowels of someone who had learned English after childhood. At her feet sat a wooden box divided into 2 compartments. Inside each compartment rested a small lamp made of blue glass. Their chimneys had been wrapped in old newspaper for the journey. "I do not fall," Eleanor said. "Then sit before you do something new." Under other circumstances, no woman in Bellweather would have spoken to her that way. Under other circumstances, Eleanor would have known the woman's name, her husband's occupation, the church she attended, and whether she paid her hotel laundry bill promptly. That morning, she sat. The stranger settled on the wooden bench beside the window, leaving enough space for the box between them. She lifted the first lamp, unwrapped its chimney, and filled the bowl from a small oil flask. "You cannot light that in here," Eleanor said. "Captain said I can, on the sill, away from coats." "Why blue glass?" "Because clear glass shows only flame. Blue glass shows flame and storm together." The woman trimmed the wick with a pair of sewing scissors. Her hands were steady. "Who are you waiting for?" Eleanor asked. "My son, Stefan. He is with the crew." Eleanor glanced toward the door through which the rescuers had gone. "A surfman?" "Not yet. Boat builder's apprentice. Strong back, poor sense. When Captain Rusk called for another hand, Stefan went before his father could stop him." "And his father?" "At home with a fever, telling the ceiling he should be here." She struck a match. The flame bent in the draft and almost died. The woman shielded it with both hands until the wick caught. Blue light trembled against her fingers. "You brought 2, Eleanor said. "Always. For your husband?" "For the one on the water and the one on the shore." The woman set the lamp on the sill. Then she looked around the crowded room. A Norwegian girl knelt with her face pressed into an old man's coat. 2 children slept against each other beneath a horse blanket. Near the stove, a woman moved her lips over a rosary. "Sometimes," the stranger said, "the one on shore is harder to find." She prepared the second lamp and held it toward Eleanor. Eleanor did not take it. "I have no use for it." "Your face says different." "You do not know my face." "No, but I know waiting." The lamp was cool where the oil had not yet warmed it. Eleanor could see a tiny trapped bubble in the blue glass. "What am I meant to do with this?" "Keep it lit." "For how long?" The woman looked at the blackboard. "Until someone comes back, or until someone must be told they will not." Eleanor accepted the lamp. The woman sat again, leaving one empty chair between them. After a moment, she said, "My name is Aneta Kravik." Eleanor watched the blue flame struggle upright. "Eleanor Whitcomb." Aneta gave no sign that the name meant anything. For the first time in many years, Eleanor was grateful not to be recognized. At 7:30, a rocket went up beyond the harbor wall. The sound reached the station a moment after the light. Everyone stood. Captain Rusk's assistant opened the inner door and shouted above the noise. "They've reached the Morning Star. She is hard on Cedar Reef. Port boiler gone. Forward deck taking water. They are sending people over by line." Questions broke from every side. "How many? Is the boat holding? Can they get the children? Was anyone lost?" The assistant raised both hands. "We know nothing else. Sit down if you can. Make room near the stove. Those brought in will be cold." No one sat. Eleanor's second lamp flickered in her hand. Aneta took a hatpin from beneath her scarf and used it to lift the wick a little. "Too low," she said. "I thought too high would smoke. Too low will drown." Eleanor looked at her. "You speak as if lamps have tempers. Everything with fire has a temper." She replaced the chimney. The two blue lamps stood side by side on the sill. Outside, dawn did not come so much as thin the darkness. The lake appeared in pieces between waves. Gray water, white spray. Nothing that could carry a ship or a human life. Eleanor had last seen Rose on a June afternoon in 1896. The day had been hot, though Rose wore a traveling coat buttoned to her throat. She had stood in the hotel kitchen beneath strings of drying herbs while Amos blocked the passage to the lobby. Jacob Lindholm waited in the alley with a hired wagon. He had been dismissed from the Whitcomb canning works 3 days earlier. Amos had called him a liar, a thief, and the son of people who brought trouble in their luggage. The charge had begun with a fire in the packing shed and ended with half the town believing Jacob had set it to hide stolen goods. Rose had believed Jacob. Eleanor had believed her husband. Or she had decided that belief and obedience were the same thing. "If you leave with him," Amos said, "you do not return." Rose looked past him at her mother. Her face had still been round with youth. A loose strand of brown hair clung to her cheek. She held no luggage except one carpet bag, though she had slept under the Whitcomb roof all her life. "Mother?" One word. It had been the last mercy Rose asked of her. Eleanor could have stepped forward. She could have said Amos was angry. She could have asked for 1 day, 1 hour, one private conversation. She could have touched her daughter's face. Instead, she said, "A wife belongs beside her husband." Rose's eyes emptied. "Then I suppose you are where you belong," she said. She walked out through the kitchen door. For years, Eleanor had repeated that she had not banished Rose. Rose had chosen to go. It was the kind of sentence that could be polished until it looked almost like truth. A wave struck the breakwater. The station windows shook. Aneta's voice came softly. "Your daughter?" Eleanor had not realized she was whispering Rose's name. "Yes." "And the boy?" "Her son." "You know him?" "No." Aneta did not ask why. That kindness hurt more than curiosity would have. The first survivors arrived shortly after 8. Surfmen carried them from the beach on canvas litters. The door opened to wind, shouting, and a spray of cold rain. Families surged forward. Captain Rusk's assistant forced them back while the station doctor moved from one soaked figure to the next. An old deckhand came in, walking between two men. Blood ran from his forehead into his beard. A woman with a broken wrist cried for a child who was already asleep by the stove. 2 sailors carried in a young mother wrapped in a sail. Then a small boy appeared in the doorway. He wore a man's oilskin coat that dragged below his knees. His lips were blue. One foot was bare. Around his neck hung a wooden swallow on a black cord. Eleanor knew the carving. Jacob Lindholm had made one for Rose during their courtship. Amos found it on the parlor table and tossed it into the stove. Rose had snatched it from the grate before the wings burned. The boy's swallow was smaller, but the curve of the wing was the same. Eleanor moved before anyone called his name. "Peter." The boy looked up. Water ran from his hair. He had Rose's gray eyes and Jacob's square jaw. He was trembling so hard that the oilskin shook.
"How do you know me?"
Eleanor knelt, the floor soaked through her skirt.
"I am your grandmother."
Peter studied her face.
"The one from the hotel?"
There was no accusation in his voice. Children could wound without knowing where the blade was.
"Yes. Mama said you had a red room with birds on the paper."
The red room had been Rose's. Eleanor had locked it after she left and allowed no guest to use it.
"I do. Mama said the birds all fly the wrong way."
Eleanor had forgotten. Rose used to lie backward on the bed and insist the printed swallows flew toward the window only if one looked at them upside down.
"Where is your mother?"
Peter's face crumpled, though no sound came. "She put me in the basket."
"What basket?"
"The rope basket. The men pulled it over the water. Mama was meant to come after, but the lady with the baby was afraid. Mama gave her the belt."
"Was your father with her?"
Peter looked confused. "Papa is dead." The room seemed to narrow around Eleanor.
"When?"
"In March, at the yard." He said it as children say facts they have been made to repeat until adults stop asking. Mama brought him home in his good coat. She said he did not hurt anymore. Eleanor put one hand against the floor to steady herself. Jacob's name on the passenger list was an error. Rose had bought 3 tickets, perhaps before his death, or the clerk had copied an older reservation. There would be no son-in-law to blame, no man standing between mother and daughter. Only 7 years, and the choices Eleanor had made in them. Peter swayed. She caught him. He was small beneath the oilskin, too small. She wrapped both arms around him, and for one terrible second he remained stiff. Then he pressed his wet face into her collar.
"Mama said I must be brave until she comes."
"You have been brave."
"I am tired of it."
Eleanor closed her eyes.
"Then you may stop for a while."
She lifted him. At 52, she had not carried a child in 27 years. Pain caught across her back, but she held on. Aneta appeared with a blanket. Together, without discussion, the 2 women took Peter to the stove. Peter's left foot had been cut on the deck, but the wound was shallow. The station doctor cleaned and wrapped it. A fisherman's wife found dry trousers. They were too wide, so Aneta took 2 quick tucks at the waist with black thread. Eleanor sat on the floor while Peter drank broth from a tin cup.
"Did your mother say why she was coming to Bellweather?"
He blew across the broth.
"To see if the birds still flew backward."
"Did she say anything else?"
"She said we might stay, if you asked right."
The answer entered Eleanor slowly.
"If I asked?"
Peter nodded.
"She said people ask wrong when they are proud. They say, 'You may come if you wish.' That means they want you to do the walking. Asking right is saying, 'I was wrong. Please come home.'"
Aneta's needle paused. Eleanor felt heat rise beneath her collar.
"Your mother told you that?" "She told Mrs. Kessler. I heard." "Who is Mrs. Kessler?" "The lady who lived under us. She cried because her daughter went to Cincinnati."
He returned to his broth. Eleanor looked toward the blackboard. Rose had not come to beg. She had not come because Jacob was dead and she needed money. She had come to see whether her mother had learned how to ask. Eleanor had not even learned that asking was required. Another rocket rose over the lake, 2 this time. Aneta stood so quickly that the spool of thread rolled across the floor. The assistant opened the inner door.
"The line has parted. Surfboats going around the reef. Could be 2 hours before the next group."
"Could be," a man shouted. "The wreck is settling." The room erupted. Aneta crossed herself. Her mouth moved, but Eleanor heard no prayer. Peter put down his cup.
My mama is still there.
Eleanor forced herself to stand.
Yes.
Will the boat get her? Across the room, people watched her. Some knew who she was now. She saw recognition passing from face to face. Mrs. Whitcomb's daughter, the one who ran away with the Swede, the one no one spoke about in the hotel. All her life, people had looked to Eleanor for certainty. She gave orders when pipes froze, when guests arrived without reservations, when Amos died in his office, when the bank threatened to call a note during the panic of 1893. She could not order the lake. She knelt before Peter again.
I do not know.
His eyes widened. It was perhaps the first honest answer anyone had given him that day.
But the boat has good men in it, she continued, and your mother has already done a brave thing. We will keep her lamp burning until she comes.
What lamp? Eleanor pointed to the blue glass on the sill. Peter looked at Aneta.
Is the other for Stefan?
Aneta's face tightened.
Yes.
Peter considered this.
Can one lamp be for two people? A lamp can be for as many as needed, Aneta said.
Peter limped to the sill. He placed one hand beside the two circles of blue light.
Then this one is for Mama and Stefan, he decided.
And that one is for the boat. No one corrected him. By 9, the storm had stripped half the shingles from the bait shed and driven water under the station door. By 10, the room smelled of wet wool, kerosene, fear, and the soup someone had begun heating in the crew kitchen. By 11, no boat had returned. Waiting changed people. At first, everyone held to the habits by which they knew themselves. The merchant checked his pocket watch. The minister spoke in a low, practiced voice. The Norwegian girl smoothed her skirt. Eleanor kept her back straight and her coat buttoned. After 3 hours, the merchant stopped opening his watch. The minister had no more phrases. The girl sat on the floor. Eleanor removed her coat and wrapped it around Peter. Aneta mended things. She repaired the torn cuff of the old deckhand. She sewed a button onto a child's shirt. She closed a split in the horse blanket with stitches so neat that each looked measured.
Do you always carry a sewing basket into storms? Eleanor asked. I carried work to the station. 6 shirtwaists for your laundry girls.
Eleanor looked at her more closely.
You sew for the hotel? When Mrs. Vale sends it, then you know who I am. Of course. You gave me the lamp anyway.
Aneta bit off a thread.
Storm does not care whose name is painted over the door. The town does. The town is not here pulling the boat.
Peter had fallen asleep with his head in Eleanor's lap. His hair, dry now, curled at the temples exactly as Rose's had. Aneta chose another button.
Stefan says your husband taught half this town to be ashamed of the other half.
Eleanor's spine stiffened.
My husband employed more men than any person in Bellweather. Yes, he built the East School, with his name over both doors. He kept the cannery open through the panic, and closed it to men who would not vote as he said.
The bluntness shocked Eleanor. So did the fact that she could not call it a lie.
Did your husband work for Amos?
Marek worked in the packing shed until the fire. Peter stirred. Aneta lowered her voice.
He was there the night they blamed Jacob Lindholm.
Eleanor stared at her. For 7 years, no one had said Jacob's name to her without apology.
What do you know about that night?
Aneta folded the repaired shirt.
Not now. You raised the matter because I forgot anger is easier than waiting. If you know something about my family, you will tell me.
Aneta's eyes lifted.
There, that is Mrs. Whitcomb asking.
Eleanor heard the iron in her own voice.
And how should I ask?
Aneta looked at Peter sleeping between them.
Right.
The word remained there. Outside, the wind shoved at the station. Eleanor placed one hand over Peter's narrow back. When she spoke again, the command was gone.
Please, tell me what your husband saw. Aneta wound the black thread around its spool. Marek saw Jacob run into the packing shed after the fire began. Not out. Into. That is not what Amos said. No. Amos said Jacob had been stealing copper fittings, that he set the fire when the night watchman caught him. Your husband said many things. And your husband waited 7 years to say otherwise?
Aneta flinched. It was slight, but Eleanor saw.
Marek had 3 children then, Aneta said. He spoke little English. Your husband told him a man who accused Amos Whitcomb would not work in any yard from here to Chicago. Marek signed the statement put before him. What statement? That he saw Jacob beside the shed before the flames. Did he? Yes. Jacob was there because the pressure valve had been screaming for 3 nights. He came to warn the watchman again.
Eleanor's mouth went dry.
Pressure valve?
The steam line that ran the packing machines. Jacob said the fittings were bad. Your husband said replacing them would halt work for a week. You are accusing a dead man. I am telling what a living man carried until it bent him.
Eleanor looked down at Peter. Jacob's son slept in her lap, wearing borrowed trousers.
If this were true, she said, why did Jacob run away? He did not run. He was driven to the Milwaukee Road with men behind him. He could have gone to court. With whose witness? Marek signed. The watchman drank. The foreman owed your husband his house. Rose never told me any of this. Would you have listened?
Eleanor turned toward the window. The 2 lamps burned steadily. No answer she could give would be honest enough. At noon, a bell rang on the beach. Once, twice, then again and again. People rushed to the windows. Through rain and spray, the surfboat appeared beyond the north pier. It rose on a wave, vanished, and appeared closer. Men on shore ran into the water with a line around their waists. Aneta gripped the window frame. Peter woke and cried out for his mother. Eleanor lifted him. She no longer felt the pain in her back. The surfboat struck sand sideways. Men surrounded it. The station doors opened. A sailor entered carrying a baby inside his shirt. Behind him came 2 women, one bleeding through a bandage at the shoulder. Then Captain Rusk, bent nearly double, supporting a surfman with a broken arm. Aneta searched every face.
Stefan?
No one answered. Another rescuer came in, then another. The last 2 men carried a stretcher. A woman's brown hair hung over its edge. Peter made a sound Eleanor had never heard from a child.
Mama!
The men lowered the stretcher near the stove. Rose's face was gray. Her lips were parted, but Eleanor could not see her breathing. For one suspended moment, Rose was 22 again, standing in the kitchen with a carpet bag in her hand.
Mother?
Eleanor gave Peter to Aneta and went to her daughter. The station doctor cut open Rose's wet coat. Beneath it, her dress was dark with blood along the ribs. She was pinned under a spar, Captain Rusk said. Wouldn't let us take her until the stoker was free.
Is she alive?
Eleanor asked. The doctor pressed 2 fingers below Rose's jaw. Barely.
What do you need?
Space.
You have it.
Eleanor turned.
Everyone who can walk, move to the equipment room. Bring hot water, more blankets. Mr. Hale, send for Dr. Pritchard and his surgical case. Tell him Mrs. Lindholm has a crushed chest and has taken lake water. Use my carriage.
The room obeyed her. This was work she knew, not saving, not healing, making space for those who could. Aneta still held Peter. Her eyes remained fixed on the door.
Stefan did not come,
she whispered. Captain Rusk heard. He is alive, Mrs. Kravik. Aneta swayed.
Where?
The Morning Star. We had room for the injured only. Stefan stayed with Keeper Shaw and 4 crew. They are rigging another line from the stern.
You left my boy?
He gave his place to Mr. Dwyer. Broken arm and head wound. Aneta shut her eyes. Pride and terror moved across her face together. Peter touched her cheek. "His lamp is still lit," he said. Aneta opened her eyes. "Then we keep it so." On the floor, Rose coughed. Water spilled from her mouth. The doctor turned her head. She dragged in a thin, ragged breath. Eleanor dropped to her knees. "Rose?" Her daughter's eyelids fluttered. Eleanor took her hand. Rose did not open her eyes, but her fingers closed once around her mother's. It was not forgiveness. It was not welcome. It was the body reaching for warmth. Eleanor held on as if it were the first honest thing she had been given in 7 years. Dr. Pritchard arrived with his leather case and the expression of a man who disliked weather for making demands outside office hours. He was 70, thin as a fireplace poker, and had delivered Rose in an upstairs bedroom of the Whitcomb house. He had also signed Amos Whitcomb's death certificate. In Bellweather, a doctor did not merely know where a family kept its medicines. He knew which griefs they lied about. He examined Rose behind a screen made from blankets. Eleanor waited on the other side with Peter. Aneta sat at the window. Every few minutes, she wiped the lamp chimneys with her apron, though they were already clean. At last, Dr. Pritchard emerged. 2 ribs broken. One may have injured the lung. Her shoulder is cut deeply, but the artery was missed. She has swallowed enough lake water to make the next day dangerous. Can you operate? There is nothing useful to cut. She needs warmth, clean dressings, and someone to watch every breath. Take her to the county infirmary. The south road is flooded. We would kill her before we reached it. Eleanor looked around the station. People lay on every bench. The floor was wet. Wind came through the warped door. Then take her to the hotel. Dr. Pritchard's brows rose. The Whitcomb house? It is 9 minutes by the hill road. We have hot water, coal heat, clean linen, and a room with southern light. Peter looked up. The red room? Eleanor met his eyes. The red room. Dr. Pritchard understood more than Peter did. That room has been shut for years. Then it is clean. A shut room is rarely clean, Eleanor. It will be by the time we arrive. She found Captain Rusk's assistant and wrote instructions on the back of the telegram. Send Martha to open Rose's room, light fire, remove dust covers, boil water, prepare bed. No guest is to enter East Hall. She hesitated, then added, Tell her Rose is coming home. The assistant read the last line and looked at Eleanor. She folded the paper into his hand. Now, he sent the fastest boy at the station. They made a litter from oars and sailcloth. 4 men carried Rose up the hill while Dr. Pritchard walked beside her. Rain struck the canvas stretched above them. Peter rode in the carriage with Eleanor, wrapped in the hotel coat and 2 blankets. Aneta stayed at the station. Eleanor had asked her to come. The words had felt strange because she had not meant them as an order. Aneta shook her head. My boy is still on the water. I will send news of Rose, and I will send news of Stefan. Before Eleanor left, Aneta lifted 1 blue lamp from the sill. Take this. It belongs at the station. 1 stays, 1 goes. For Rose? For the one on shore, Aneta said. She placed the wooden box on Eleanor's lap. The lamp burned inside it, protected by high sides. Peter held his hands around the chimney without touching the glass. All the way up the hill, Eleanor watched the flame. It bent when the carriage turned. It shivered when a wheel struck a rut. Twice she thought it would go out. It did not. Martha stood beneath the hotel awning when they arrived. The front steps were crowded with guests. Word had traveled faster than the carriage. Men in traveling coats craned their necks. Chambermaids gathered in the lobby. Mrs. Cora Bell, president of the Women's Civic League and the town's most devoted collector of other people's misfortunes, stood nearest the door. Eleanor climbed down. "Clear the lobby." The night clerk began moving people back. Cora Bell touched Eleanor's sleeve.
My dear, we were so distressed to hear. Is it true that Rose was on the ship?
"Move!"
Of course.
But perhaps the service entrance would be quieter, for her sake. The service entrance opened onto an alley of coal bins and kitchen refuse. Rose had left through it 7 years earlier. Eleanor looked at Cora. My daughter will enter through the front door. Cora's pale eyes widened.
I only thought of the guests.
Then think of them from the breakfast room.
The litter reached the steps. Eleanor walked ahead of it into the lobby. There had always been rules for crossing that floor. Gentlemen removed their hats. Ladies did not appear without gloves. Tradesmen used the side door. Wet boots stopped on the black runner. Rose entered unconscious, bleeding, wrapped in a fisherman's sail. Her bearers left water across the polished wood. No one tried to stop them. Peter walked behind, holding the box with the blue lamp. Martha saw him and covered her mouth.
This is Peter Lindholm, Eleanor said. He is Rose's son.
The staff looked from Eleanor to the boy. Martha lowered herself slowly until they were eye to eye.
You have her eyebrows,
she whispered. Peter touched one brow as if he had never noticed it.
Do you know my mama?
Martha's eyes filled.
I knew her when she was smaller than you. Did the birds fly backward then?
Martha began to cry. She turned her face, ashamed. Peter looked at Eleanor.
Why does everybody cry when I ask about the birds? Because grown people often remember too late,
Eleanor said. It was not an answer a 6-year-old could use, but it was all she had. They carried Rose upstairs. The red room waited at the end of the east hall. Martha had opened the shutters. Gray stormlight lay over the furniture. The wallpaper was faded, but the swallows still flew in uneven rows across the walls. White sheets had been pulled from the bed and dressing table. A fire crackled in the grate. Eleanor stopped in the doorway.
Nothing had changed except the dust. Rose's silver-backed hairbrush lay on the dressing table. A school prize, Tennyson's poems, stood between 2 porcelain dogs. In the wardrobe hung a summer dress with leg of mutton sleeves, hopelessly out of fashion. For 7 years, Eleanor had called the locked door dignity. Now it looked like what it was. A room kept ready for a person she had refused to call home. Dr. Pritchard ordered everyone out except Martha and the laundress. They cut away Rose's dress, cleaned the wound, bound her ribs, and wrapped hot bricks in flannel for the bed. Peter sat in the hall. Eleanor sat beside him.
Will she wake?
The doctor believes so.
That is not what he said.
Children had every uncertainty adults tried to hide.
No,
Eleanor admitted.
It is not.
Peter swung his wrapped foot above the carpet.
Mrs. Kessler says Papa is in heaven. Do you believe her?
Mama says heaven is not a place we should use to make people stop asking. Eleanor almost smiled. That was Rose. Even as a girl, she had disliked answers made neat for the comfort of the speaker. What did your father say?
Before he died?
Yes. Peter looked toward the closed door.
He said I must look after Mama, but not make her think she needs looking after. That is a difficult instruction. Papa gave difficult instructions. What work did he do? He built engines, not whole ones, the pieces that tell steam where to go.
Valves. Eleanor thought of Aneta's words at the station. The pressure valve had been screaming for 3 nights.
Was your father a good man?
Peter frowned.
He was Papa.
The answer allowed no judge. Eleanor put her hands together so the boy would not see them tremble.
Did he speak of Bellweather? He said the lake was kinder than people, because it never pretended.
That too sounded like Jacob. Did he speak of me? Peter looked at her. Sometimes.
What did he say?
That Mama had your hands. Eleanor looked down. Her fingers were long and square at the tips. Rose's hand, limp in hers at the station, had felt exactly the same.
Anything else?
Peter hesitated. He said, "You were afraid." Eleanor's chin lifted.
Of what?
He did not say. The bedroom door opened. Dr. Pritchard wiped his spectacles. She is settled. Her pulse is poor, but not worse. I want someone with her every moment.
I will sit.
For the next hour, yes. Then Martha. Then someone else. Pride is no use if you faint across the patient.
I do not faint.
So I have heard. He put on his coat. Send for me if her breathing grows shallow, if fever rises sharply, or if her lips turn blue. I will return by sundown.
You are leaving?
There are 27 souls from that ship and one old doctor in Bellweather. He looked toward the stairs. The hotel may receive more before the day ends. This is not an infirmary. The old habit answered before Eleanor could stop it. Dr. Pritchard glanced at the red room. No. Today, it is a house. He went downstairs. Rose did not know her mother was beside her. She fought for each breath. Sometimes she moaned. Once she called Jacob's name. Peter heard from the window seat but did not cry. Eleanor cooled Rose's face with a damp cloth. She had done the same when Rose was 5 and had scarlet fever. Amos refused to enter the nursery for fear of carrying illness to the hotel. Eleanor had remained awake 3 nights. On the 4th morning, Rose opened her eyes and demanded toast. Eleanor had thought love was proven by the nights one stayed. She had never considered the years one did not. At 1:30, Martha brought tea and a tray neither Eleanor touched.
The station sent word,
Martha said. Eleanor looked toward Peter. Say it. The second boat returned. Stefan Kravik is safe. A broken collarbone, but he walked ashore. Peter slid from the window seat. His lamp worked. He ran into the hall before either woman could stop him, calling for someone to take a message to Aneta. Martha watched him go.
He is very like her. You said he had her eyebrows. Not his face. The way he expects an answer.
Eleanor refolded the cloth.
You told me Rose might not want to see only me.
Martha went still.
Yes. Why? Because she asked for me once.
The room became quiet except for Rose's breathing.
When?
Martha looked at the fire.
The winter after Peter was born.
Eleanor set the cloth in the basin.
Rose came here? To the kitchen door.
You are mistaken.
No.
I was in this hotel every day that winter. You were in the north parlor with the state hotel inspectors. Mr. Whitcomb was alive.
Amos died the next spring.
Yes. Eleanor stood.
Why was I not told?
Martha's hands twisted in her apron.
He saw her first. And? He ordered me to send her away. You obeyed. I told her you were not at home.
Eleanor felt the edge of the washstand against her palm.
What did she want? She did not say. She carried the baby. He was wrapped in a green blanket. She looked thin. There was snow in her hair. You sent my daughter and grandson into the snow.
Martha's face crumpled.
Yes. And for 6 years you said nothing. I was afraid. Of Amos? Of losing my place. Of the talk. Of you.
Eleanor recoiled as if struck.
You had no reason to fear me.
Martha lifted her eyes. For once,
Service did not lower them. I watched you let her leave the first time. Eleanor could not breathe. Martha wiped her face with both hands. I told myself she would come again. I told myself Mr. Whitcomb would soften. Then he died. After that, I thought you would send for her. Why did you not tell me then? Every month I waited. The telling became worse. And you locked this room. You said no one was to speak her name. I thought perhaps you knew. You thought I knew she came with a child and let her leave? I did not know what you were capable of knowing and not saying. Rose coughed. Both women turned. Eleanor supported her shoulders while Martha held the basin. Rose's breath rattled. For a moment her eyes opened. They fixed on Martha. Recognition moved faintly across her face. You, Rose whispered. Martha made a broken sound. Yes, Miss Rose. Rose's eyes closed. The moment was over. Martha backed toward the door. Dismiss me if you wish. Eleanor thought of every breakfast laid on time, every guest sheet turned, every room kept through illness and death. She thought of a young mother standing in snow with a green-wrapped child. I may, she said. Martha nodded. But not today. Today my daughter needs clean water. Bring it. Martha went. Eleanor sat again. The room had become crowded with people who were not there. Amos at the kitchen door, Martha behind him, Rose in the snow, a baby Eleanor had never held. She took her daughter's hand. I did not know, she whispered. Rose did not answer. Eleanor bowed her head. But I made it possible. That was the first confession. No one heard it. It still changed the room. By mid-afternoon, the Whitcomb house had received 12 survivors and 19 relatives. The storm closed both roads out of town. The county infirmary sent word that its west roof had lifted. Captain Rusk asked whether the hotel could spare beds. Eleanor said yes. The night clerk reminded her that 20 commercial guests had paid through Friday. Refund any man who objects, she said. And if they all object, then refund them all. 3 objected. 2 changed their minds when they saw an injured sailor carried through the lobby. The third, a salesman from Indiana, demanded the largest carriage to take him to the station. Eleanor gave him the smallest. The breakfast room became a ward. White tablecloths were stripped from the tables and torn into bandages. The long mahogany sideboard held medicines, bowls, and steaming kettles. Chambermaids carried coal. The French cook, who claimed to despise soup, made 40 quarts of it. Cora Bell returned in a dry dress. She brought 4 members of the Civic League and an air of being ready to manage a disaster once the dangerous portion had passed. We have come to help, she announced. Eleanor handed her a pile of wet blankets. Laundry yard. Boil them. Cora looked at the blankets. I thought perhaps the League might organize names. The blackboard has names. Or receive respectable families in the private parlour. The private parlour is for the women from steerage. Their children are asleep. Cora lowered her voice. Eleanor, you cannot mix everyone. People will understand necessity, but there are limits. Eleanor looked across the lobby. A Norwegian fisherman slept beneath Amos Whitcomb's portrait. Beside him, a banker's wife held a compress to an immigrant child's forehead. Peter sat on the rug teaching a younger boy to make a whistle from a button and string. I have misunderstood necessity most of my life, Eleanor said. I will not misunderstand it today. Cora's gaze went to the east staircase. Is Rose truly here? Yes. I heard her husband died. So did I. Then perhaps this is Providence. She may return quietly. A widow can be forgiven for youthful mistakes. Eleanor felt something inside her become very calm. Whose mistake? Cora blinked.
My dear? You called it a youthful mistake. Whose? Surely we need not revisit old unpleasantness while the poor woman is ill. You have revisited it at every tea table for 7 years.
The lobby quieted near them. Cora flushed.
I always defended you.
I know. I said no mother could be blamed when a headstrong daughter chose a foreign laborer over her family. Peter stood behind Cora. He held the button spinner in one hand.
My papa was not a foreign laborer,
he said. Cora turned. Peter's chin trembled, but he did not lower it.
He built steam governors. Mr. Houghton said he had the best hands in the yard.
I am sure your father worked very hard, Cora said, putting kindness into her voice as one might put sugar over spoiled fruit.
He did.
Peter looked at Eleanor. For 1 second, she saw the question. Would his grandmother remain silent? Eleanor crossed the lobby.
Peter Lindholm is my grandson, she said. His father was Jacob Lindholm, a skilled mechanic and my daughter's husband. Anyone who cannot speak of either with respect may leave my hotel. Cora's mouth opened. Eleanor picked up the wet blankets and returned them to her arms. The copper is behind the kitchen. Mind the steam. A laugh escaped from someone near the desk, then another. Cora held the blankets as if they were evidence at a trial. She turned and walked toward the laundry yard. Peter looked at Eleanor. Did you like my papa? The victory went out of the moment. No, she said. His face closed. But I may have been wrong. Mama says may have is a door people leave open so they can run back through it. Eleanor heard Jacob in that sentence, or imagined she did. Then I was wrong. Peter studied her for a long moment. That is asking better, he said.
He returned to the rug. Aneta arrived just before dusk. She came through the front doors with Stefan on one side and Marek on the other. Stefan's right arm was bound across his chest. He was 19, taller than both parents, with wet yellow hair and the dazed pride of a boy who had discovered courage could hurt. Marek coughed into a handkerchief. He was thick-set and stooped, his face gray from fever. Eleanor met them at the desk.
You should be in bed, she told Marek.
My wife said same. I did not listen to her either. Aneta carried the second blue lamp in its box. Peter ran down the stairs.
Stefan!
The young man blinked.
You know me?
I kept your lamp.
Peter took Stefan's good hand and led him into the lobby to show where both lamps now stood on the mantel. One for the water, one for the shore. Aneta watched him.
Your Rose? Still unconscious. Her fever is rising. Then I stay. Your son needs you.
My son has father, doctor, and half the girls in Bellweather watching him. Stefan, overhearing, turned red. Aneta removed her scarf. Your daughter needs a woman who can sit without making her forgive too soon. Eleanor bristled. I have asked nothing of her. Not with mouth. You know very little about us. I know you look at sleeping woman like you want her to wake and wash 7 years clean.
The words were cruel only because they were exact. Eleanor looked toward the east stairs.
What should I want? For her to wake. Nothing more today.
Aneta touched her sleeve.
Tomorrow will bring its own greed.
Together they went upstairs. The fever came after midnight. By then the wind had weakened. The hotel settled into a tired silence broken by footsteps, coughs, and the occasional clatter of a basin. Rose began to shiver beneath 3 blankets. Aneta sat on one side of the bed and Eleanor on the other.
They changed cool cloths. They measured drops of medicine. They lifted Rose when coughing seized her and held a folded sheet against her injured ribs.
At 1 in the morning, Rose called for Jacob. At 2, she begged someone not to close a door. At 3, she opened her eyes and saw Eleanor. Fear came first. Rose tried to pull away. Pain stopped her. "No," she whispered. "You are safe."
"Peter?"
Down the hall, sleeping.
"I want him."
"I will bring him when the doctor says." Rose's eyes sharpened.
"You do not decide."
The voice was weak. The old wound in it was not. Eleanor stood. "No, I do not." She sent Martha for Peter. He came barefoot in a nightshirt borrowed from the cook's son. When he saw Rose awake, he climbed onto the bed before anyone could stop him. Rose cried out at the movement. Peter froze. "Your mother's ribs are hurt," Aneta said. "Lie by her left side, quiet as a mouse in church."
Mice do not go to church. Polish mice do. He arranged himself carefully beside Rose's arm. She touched his hair. Her fingers moved over his face, his ears, the back of his neck, counting him by touch. "You came over the line?" Peter nodded. "Mr. Shaw put me in the basket. I did not cry."
"You could have."
"I know."
"Your foot?"
6 stitches. I watched 4.
"Only 4?"
Grandmother made me look away. Rose's hand stopped. She looked at Eleanor. The word had entered the room before either woman was ready. Eleanor said,
"He was alone when he came ashore. And you knew him? The swallow."
Rose saw the carved bird around Peter's neck. Her face softened.
"Jacob made it last Christmas."
Eleanor wanted to ask why Rose had come, why she had risked November water with a child, why Jacob had died without word reaching Bellweather. Each question pressed forward. Aneta looked at her. Tomorrow will bring its own greed. Eleanor remained silent. Rose's eyes closed again.
"Where are we?"
The Red Room. This time Rose opened her eyes fully. She looked at the wallpaper. For a few seconds, she was not a widow or a mother or an injured woman. She was a girl, staring at birds she had once known.
"They still fly the wrong way,"
she murmured. Then she slept. Eleanor turned aside so Peter would not see her face. Aneta did. She said nothing. At dawn, Dr. Pritchard listened to Rose's chest. "The right lung is wet, but the fever has stopped climbing. That is something."
"Is it enough?"
Eleanor asked. "Enough is a word for accountants and undertakers. The living rarely know what enough is." He left instructions and went downstairs to inspect the survivors. Aneta fell asleep in the armchair. Peter remained beside Rose. Eleanor went to the kitchen for the first time since the telegram arrived. The room was hot with bread ovens and boiling wash water. Staff moved around cots laid between the work tables. The French cook slept with his head on a sack of flour. Cora Bell, stripped of hat and dignity, stood over the laundry copper stirring blankets with a broom handle. She looked at Eleanor.
"I have blisters. So do the women who wash your sheets every week." I did not know.
Neither did I. They considered each other across the steam. Cora lowered her voice.
"The town is saying Amos's name again. The town never stopped. Not kindly. That is new. They say the wreck is judgment. They say Rose returned to make claims on the hotel. They say Jacob's name was on the list because she traveled as though he were alive. Why would she do that? A widow alone pays more attention at ticket counters."
Eleanor knew this was possible. A married woman had protection even when her husband was a name written on paper. Cora continued.
"They also say Marek Kravietz means to accuse Amos over the old cannery fire. So quickly. Bellweather could turn steam into rumor before it cooled." "Did you begin that story?" Cora looked offended.
"I came here to help."
"That does not answer me."
"No, Stefan spoke at the station. The boy was frightened and angry. People heard."
Eleanor took a cup from the shelf and poured coffee from the kitchen pot. It was thick, burned, and black. "What are you going to do?" Cora asked. "Drink this. About Amos. He is dead. His name is not. Neither is yours. The Harbor Board votes next month on the memorial fountain. If scandal grows, they may withdraw the dedication." For 2 years, Cora and the Civic League had raised subscriptions for a fountain honoring Amos Whitcomb as father of Bellweather industry. A bronze likeness of him had already been cast in Grand Rapids. Eleanor had approved the inscription. "Perhaps they should," she said. Cora stared. "Eleanor, grief has unsettled you." "No, waiting has." "There will be consequences." "There were consequences before. I was merely not the person paying them." Cora set down the broom handle. "You speak as if Amos were guilty. I do not yet know what he was." "He was your husband." Eleanor looked at the steam rising between them. "Yes." Once that had been the end of every question. It was not an answer now. On the second day, the storm passed. Sunlight revealed damage the dark had hidden. The North Pier had lost 40 feet. 2 fishing boats lay upside down on Front Street. Broken boxes, lumber, and 1 white dining chair had washed onto the beach. The Morning Star remained on Cedar Reef, her bow above water and her stern sunk. No bodies were found. Every passenger had either reached shore or been accounted for among the injured. Bellweather called it a miracle. Captain Rusk called it a good line, a stubborn boat, and luck no one should insult by naming it too much. Rose woke near noon. The fever had fallen. Her voice was clearer. Peter sat at the foot of the bed carving a piece of soap with a butter knife. "What is that?" Rose asked. "A gull." "It resembles a potato." "It is a gull before the wings." She smiled. The smile vanished when she saw Eleanor near the window. "How long have you been there?" "Since yesterday." "Why?" Eleanor almost said, "Because you are my daughter." The sentence would have demanded something from Rose. It would have used blood as a claim after 7 years of absence. "Because Peter needed someone," she said, "and because I wanted to." Rose studied her. "Where is my trunk?" "The ship's cargo hold is under water." Rose shut her eyes. There was nothing valuable. What was in it? Clothes, Jacob's tools, Peter's school books. Her breath caught. The tin case. What tin case? Black, with a leather strap. It was under the berth, not in the hold. What is in it? Rose turned her face away. Something that belongs to you. Eleanor waited. Rose did not continue. Peter looked from one woman to the other. Is it the whistle? Rose's eyes opened. Peter, the one Papa said made Mr. Whitcomb a liar? Silence filled the room. Eleanor sat down. What whistle? Rose looked at her son. Go find Mrs. Kravick. But the gull! Take the gull. Peter climbed down and limped from the room. Rose waited until his footsteps faded. Jacob kept the steam whistle from the packing shed. Why? Because it was the only thing he had left from that night. Aneta told me he went there to warn the watchman. He had warned Amos twice. Did he tell you this then? He told everyone who would listen. No one would. I would have. Rose looked at her. No anger appeared. Something worse did. Pity. I asked you one question in the kitchen, she said. Eleanor felt the old room around them, heat, herbs, Amos standing broad in the doorway. I know. You answered. I answered badly. You answered clearly. Eleanor looked at the blue lamp on the bedside table. Its flame had burned low. She raised the wick. Tell me about the whistle. The pressure line had an alarm, a brass steam whistle, no longer than your hand. When pressure climbed, it screamed. The foreman tied the lever down because the sound frightened the girls. Eleanor stared at her. Tied it? Jacob cut the wire twice. Amos ordered it tied again. The night of the fire, Jacob heard the line from the street. He ran inside. The joint burst before he reached the valve. The report said oil rags caught. Amos wrote the report. He said Jacob stole copper. Jacob carried the broken whistle out under his coat. That was the copper they found. The room seemed suddenly too warm. Why did Jacob keep it?
At first for court, then because no lawyer would take a case against Amos. Later, I think he kept it because throwing it away would mean agreeing the lie had won. And you brought it here? Jacob asked me to. Why was his name on the passenger list? We bought 3 tickets in February. After he died, I told the shipping clerk only that my husband had been delayed. A widow traveling alone attracts questions. A married woman whose husband may appear at the next stop is left in peace. So you let a dead man's name protect you? It was the last protection the world allowed him to give. Before he died? Rose's hand tightened on the blanket. He was crushed between a flywheel and a wall. He lived 4 hours, long enough to know he was dying. Eleanor waited, though every part of her wanted to turn from the image. He said he was tired of carrying Bellweather into every house we rented, tired of waking angry. He asked me to bring the whistle back to you. Why me? He said you should decide whether to keep hearing it after he was gone. The words left no bruise one could show. They simply altered the shape of everything. Why now? Eleanor asked. Because after his funeral, Peter began asking why he had no grandmother. Rose's voice thinned. I told him I had a mother in Bellweather. He asked if you were dead. I said no. Then he asked why we behaved as if you were. Eleanor looked toward the door. You came to reconcile? I came to see. To see what? Whether Amos was still standing between us after 6 months in the ground. Amos had been dead 6 years. Rose still spoke as if he had died yesterday. Eleanor understood. Some men remained alive wherever women continued to obey them. And is he? She asked. Rose looked around the preserved room, at the old dress in the wardrobe, at Tennyson untouched on the shelf, at the portrait of Amos, visible through the open door at the far end of the hall. I do not know yet. Eleanor nodded. Then rest until you do. She rose. Mother. The word stopped her. Rose looked surprised to have said it. The tin case may still be on the wreck. I will ask Captain Rusk. Do not send someone into danger for a piece of brass. I will ask, not order. Rose almost smiled. Peter has been teaching you, with very little patience. He is Jacob's son. Yes, Eleanor said. I begin to understand that. The third day brought clear skies and visitors. Some came out of concern. Some came because misfortune inside a fine hotel was more interesting than misfortune inside a poor house. Eleanor received none in the East Hall. She placed a chair at the foot of the staircase and told the porter no one passed without Rose's permission. Cora Bell sent hothouse grapes and a note saying she had always hoped for peace. Rose ate 3 grapes and gave the note to Peter for his paper boat. Stefan Kraviak came with his arm strapped to his chest. He stood awkwardly at Rose's door. You helped bring me ashore, she said. Captain did. Peter says you gave up your place. Stefan looked embarrassed. Mr. Dwyer was bleeding. So were you. Not as much. Rose held out her hand. Stefan shook it. Thank you. 2 words.
No public praise, no medal. Stefan's eyes filled anyway. Aneta arrived behind him with a covered bowl.
"Chicken soup," she said. "The hotel has soup," Eleanor replied. "Hotel soup tastes like a cook made it for 40 people." "He did." "This tastes like one woman made it for another."
Rose took the bowl. After 2 spoonfuls, she said, "She is right." Aneta looked pleased. Eleanor pretended offense. Peter laughed so hard he dropped the paper boat into the wash basin. It was the first laughter the Red Room had heard in 7 years. The wallpaper did not seem to know what to do with it. That afternoon, Marek Kravietz asked to speak with Eleanor. He waited in the old writing room behind the lobby. His fever had broken, but illness had left his face hollow. He removed his cap and turned it between thick hands. Aneta sat near the door. "My wife says I owe you truth," he began. "You owe Jacob." "Jacob is dead." "That does not cancel the debt." Marek lowered his eyes. "No." Eleanor sat behind Amos's old desk. She had not intended the position to matter. The moment Marek looked smaller, she moved to a chair beside him. "Tell me what happened after the fire." Marek spoke slowly. The packing shed had been running day and night for the autumn fish catch. Steam drove the sealing machines. The main line shook so badly that cups rattled in the workers' room. Jacob, then 26, had been hired to maintain the machinery. He found a cracked joint and ordered the line shut. The foreman refused. Amos arrived. The contract had to be filled by Monday. A week of repairs would cost money and, more importantly to him, make a rival cannery first to market. Jacob argued in front of 30 workers. Amos dismissed him. 3 nights later, Jacob passed the building and heard the warning whistle. "I was outside," Marek said. "Smoke came from eaves. Jacob ran past me. I told him not to go. He said girls still inside." "Girls?" Eleanor asked. "Label room. 7 of them." Jacob broke a side window and pulled 2 women through. Marek and the watchman brought out the rest. Then the steam line burst. Fire crossed ceiling. The foreman was burned on both hands. Amos arrived before the town marshal. "He saw whistle under Jacob's coat," Marek said. "He said Jacob stole it. Jacob tried show wire on lever, but foreman took it away." The foreman testified against him. "Mr. Cobb had mortgage from your husband." There was no secret paper that could expose it. Only a town in which every man's roof could be held by another man's hand. "And you signed." "I signed." "Did Amos threaten your family?" Marek looked at Aneta. "He did not need say much. He asked how old my daughters. Asked if landlord still let us pay week by week. Asked if I think Milwaukee Mills hire man with arson friend." Aneta's mouth hardened. "You came home and told me Jacob had started fire," she said. Marek nodded. "I believed you," she continued. "I crossed street when Rose walked by. I would not take sewing from her." Eleanor looked at Aneta. "You knew this?" "Marek told me truth last year." "After Stefan began work at Boatyard. He feared the boy would hear from someone else." "Why did neither of you tell me?" Aneta answered. "Would you have listened last year?" Again the question, again, no defense. Marek reached into his coat and removed a small object wrapped in cloth. "This is mine." Inside lay a brass tag blackened at one edge. The words Whitcomb Canning Works had been stamped across it. Beneath them was the number 47. "Worker tag," Marek said. "We hang at door when go in, take down when leave. After fire your husband gave new tags, said old were damaged. Mine was in pocket." He laid it in Eleanor's palm. "I kept because I thought one day I would speak. Every year, it became heavier.
This proves only that you worked there.
Yes,
The town will say you lie.
yes,
You may lose work.
maybe.
Then why speak now?
Marek looked through the doorway toward the lobby where Stefan was showing Peter how a surfboat knot held under strain. My son went into storm because man was hurt. He did not first ask who owns house. His eyes returned to Eleanor. I do not want him learn courage from lake and cowardice from father. Eleanor closed her fingers around the tag.
There is to be a fountain, she said.
Marek looked confused.
For Amos. The dedication is in December.
Aneta made a sound of disgust. A fountain for man who would not stop steam. The sentence was almost too exact. Eleanor set the tag on the table.
The harbor board will meet Friday. Will you speak?
Marek's face went pale. Aneta watched him. Eleanor saw what she had done. She had taken his confession and immediately tried to turn it into public use. A task, a weapon, another demand from a Whitcomb.
No,
She said before he answered.
forgive me. That was not mine to ask yet.
Marek looked surprised. You need proof. I need truth. Proof may be impossible. Then town keeps statue. Not if I refuse it. Aneta leaned forward.
You would?
Eleanor looked at Amos's desk. The leather top bore a pale square where his inkstand had sat. Every choice in the hotel had once been arranged around his habits. Even dead, he had the largest portrait, the locked office, the memorial committee, and a daughter still measuring home by whether he stood in the doorway. Yes, she said. I would. Marek picked up his cap. I speak Friday.
You need not.
I know. He closed his hand around the brass tag, then placed it back on the table. Now I do. Rose remained in bed for 9 days. Recovery did not move like a door opening. It moved like winter loosening from a roof. A drop, a crack, a small collapse no one noticed until light came through. On the 4th day, she sat upright long enough to have her hair washed. On the 5th, she ate downstairs in the private parlor after the survivors had gone. On the 6th, she walked to the bedroom window with Eleanor's arm beneath hers. She did not thank her mother for the support. Eleanor learned not to need thanks for what should have been offered years before. From the window they could see the wreck of the Morning Star. A salvage tug rested beside it. Men moved over the tilted deck like insects.
Captain Rusk says they may raise the forward cabins tomorrow, Eleanor said. He should not risk anyone for the case. The owners are salvaging cargo. He is only watching for it.
Rose touched her ribs.
Jacob would laugh. Why? All the things we lost over the years. Chairs left when rent rose, dishes broken in moves, his wedding coat sold for medicine when Peter had pneumonia. He never minded. But that ugly tin case went everywhere. Because of the whistle? Because of what it meant. Anger?
Rose considered.
At first, later, memory.
Of the fire?
Of who he had been before everyone told him who he was.
Eleanor looked at the lake.
Who was he? Stubborn, vain about his hands, too willing to correct men who paid him. He sang badly. He could repair a clock but never arrived anywhere on time.
Her expression softened.
He made Peter a new toy every Christmas, not because we were poor. We were sometimes. He did it because he said a child should own one thing no shop could sell.
Eleanor thought of the swallow.
Did he hate me? For a while. And later? Later he pitied you.
That answer again. Eleanor would have preferred hatred. Hatred made two sides. Pity placed her alone with what she had chosen.
Did you?
Rose turned from the window.
Hate you? Yes. For years.
There was no hesitation.
Then Peter was born. I would watch him sleep and imagine sending him through a door. I could not understand you enough to hate you cleanly.
Eleanor sat in the window chair.
My mother married a sailor.
Rose's brow tightened.
Grandfather Whitcomb owned the cannery. He was my stepfather.
Eleanor had never told her. The secret was small beside Amos's lies, yet it had governed her life.
My father was named Nathaniel Price. He worked the ore boats. When I was 4, his ship went down north of Manitou. No bodies came back. You told me Grandfather Whitcomb was your father. He adopted me after marrying my mother. Why hide that? Because Josiah Whitcomb disliked reminders that his wife had once lived in 2 rented rooms above a chandlery. He gave me his name, education, and a place at his table. In return, I learned not to speak of Nathaniel.
Rose sat carefully on the foot of the bed.
Did your mother love him? Josiah? Your father?
Eleanor watched the salvage tug rise and fall. She waited at the harbor every day for 3 weeks. People laughed at her after the wreckage was found. She still went. When she married Josiah, she burned Nathaniel's picture.
You saw?
She made me watch. She said we had been rescued from that life. Rose understood before Eleanor finished.
That is why you hated Jacob.
I did not hate him.
You heard sailor, immigrant, no family name, and saw 2 rooms above a chandlery.
He was a mechanic, not a sailor.
Fear is not precise.
Eleanor almost denied it. Then she remembered Peter saying Jacob believed she was afraid. No, she said. It is not.
Did you love Amos?
The question would once have been forbidden. I admired him. He was certain of everything. After a childhood in which the weather could take a man and poverty could take the rest, certainty looked like safety.
That is not what I asked.
Eleanor looked at her daughter. I loved the life he promised. Later, I loved the order we made. There were days I loved him. There were years I feared displeasing him more than I feared losing you. Rose lowered her eyes.
That is the first thing you have said that sounds true.
It is not a beautiful truth.
Beautiful truths are usually decorations.
Rose touched the jet brooch at Eleanor's collar.
Why do you still wear mourning?
Widows are expected to.
Not for 6 years.
Eleanor put a hand over the brooch. It was made from polished coal-black stone carved into ivy leaves. Amos had chosen it before his death, as if arranging the costume of her grief. Habit, she said.
Or allegiance?
Eleanor unpinned it. The cloth beneath had faded around its shape. She set it on the sill. Habit, she said again. This time it sounded less certain. Peter disappeared on the 10th morning. Martha noticed first. His porridge stood untouched. His coat was gone from the hook. The carved swallow was not beside his bed. Eleanor searched the red room, kitchen, laundry yard, stable, and every empty guest room. Rose tried to follow, but nearly collapsed in the east hall.
He went to the wreck, she said. How would he reach it? He asked Stefan yesterday whether the salvage tug took visitors.
Eleanor rang for the porter. Within 5 minutes, 3 men were running toward the harbor. Rose gripped the stair rail.
Bring my coat.
You cannot go out.
Do not begin.
You are barely able to stand.
He is my son.
And if you tear the wound and leave him with no mother? Rose's face went white with anger. You do not get to use motherhood against me. Eleanor released the rail as if it burned.
No.
The hotel staff had gone silent. Eleanor took Rose's coat from Martha and helped her into it.
The carriage,
she said. They rode to the harbor together. Neither spoke. At the salvage pier, Captain Rusk met them with Peter by the collar. The boy's boots were muddy. His face was defiant. Behind him stood Stefan, looking guilty. "He hid beneath a tarpaulin on the tug," Captain Rusk said. "We found him before casting off." Rose bent as far as her ribs allowed.
What were you thinking?
Peter looked at the ground.
The case belongs to grandmother. A piece of brass does not matter more than you. Papa said it did. Your father said what it meant mattered, not the thing.
Peter began to cry. It was the first time Eleanor had seen him do so.
Everybody keeps losing what Papa touched, he said. The tools went in the lake, his coat went to the medicine man, the chair broke. If the whistle goes too, how will grandmother know he told the truth?
Rose reached for him. He pulled away. Eleanor knelt on the wet boards.
I know.
Peter shook his head.
You said you needed proof.
No. I believed your father before the whistle.
Why?
Because people who were there told me. Because your mother told me. Because I have learned what my husband could do when his name was threatened. Peter looked at her through tears.
But what if the town does not?
Then the town is wrong.
The town is big.
It is.
Bigger than you?
Behind Peter, Captain Rusk looked away to hide something like a smile. Eleanor put both hands around the boy's cold fingers. For most of my life, I thought it was. That was my mistake. Captain Rusk cleared his throat. The salvage master found a black tin case in cabin 12 this morning. Peter stopped crying.
He did?
Locks rusted, straps gone. It may not be yours.
Can we see?
The captain looked at Rose. She nodded. A deckhand brought the case from the shed. One corner was crushed. The black paint had peeled. A line of dried weed clung to the hinge. Rose touched the lid. It is Jacob's. The lock broke beneath the screwdriver. Inside, water had ruined Peter's primer and swollen the handles of the tools. A wool shirt lay heavy and dark. At the bottom, wrapped in oilcloth, was the whistle. It was smaller than Eleanor imagined. Brass, scarred by heat, with a bent lever and a piece of rusted wire still twisted around its base. No judge would have called it beautiful. Peter lifted it with both hands. Papa polished it every New Year. Eleanor saw a line scratched into the brass. J.L. 1896. Jacob had marked the year his name was taken from him. Would you like to keep it? Rose asked Eleanor. She expected to want it. A thing could be displayed. A thing could be offered to a board. A thing could make confession easier. But Peter's fingers fitted the curve worn by his father's hand.
No,
Eleanor said.
It belongs to you.
Papa said it belonged to you.
Your father gave me the choice to hear it. I hear it.
She closed Peter's fingers around the brass. Keep what his hands made and what his courage saved. Do not keep his anger because you think it is loyalty. Rose looked at her sharply. You speak as if anger is easy to put down. No, I speak as someone who put nothing down and called the weight strength. Rose's expression changed. Not forgiveness, but the door had moved, only the width of a breath. It was movement. Friday's Harbour Board meeting was held in the county courthouse because too many people wished to attend. The morning newspaper had printed the matter in heavy type. Whitcomb fire charge, revived widow, may oppose husband's memorial. Below the headline, the editor reminded readers that Jacob Lindholm had never been convicted of any crime. For 7 years, the same paper had called him the suspected incendiary. Eleanor noticed the correction did not include an apology. Rose remained at the hotel with Peter. Her strength had improved, but she refused to attend. It is your father's name, Eleanor said. You have a right to hear. I heard it all my life. Then come to hear it answered. Rose shook her head.
No. If you do this because I watch, you will resent me when it costs you. I will not. You do not know the cost yet.
Eleanor began to argue, then stopped.
What do you want me to say? Whatever you can still say when no one rewards you.
So Eleanor went alone, or believed she did. At the bottom of the hotel steps, Aneta waited in a brown coat. Marek stood beside her, wearing his Sunday suit. Stefan had polished his boots and combed his hair flat.
You need not come,
Eleanor said. Marek nodded. That is why I can. They walked to the courthouse together. The hearing room smelled of wet overcoats and floor wax. The 5 harbor commissioners sat behind a long table. The bronze memorial plaque leaned against the wall beneath a cloth. Cora Bell occupied the front row with the Civic League. Eleanor took a seat beside the Kravic family. Whispers moved through the room. Amos Whitcomb's widow did not sit beside immigrant laborers. That morning, she did. Commissioner Hale opened the meeting with a prayer, perhaps hoping God would settle what the board preferred not to. Then he explained that recent questions made it prudent to reconsider the wording of the memorial. Not the memorial itself, only the wording. We are not a court, he said. We cannot retry events of 1896. Mr. Whitcomb is not here to answer allegations. Marek's hands tightened around his cap. Eleanor saw his courage begin to leave. She leaned closer. You may walk out, she whispered. He looked at her. You will not stop me? No. Then I stay. Commissioner Hale called Eleanor's name. Every face turned. She went to the front. For 3 decades, she had spoken at hotel openings, league ceremonies, funerals, and school dedications. She knew how to give a room the version of itself it wanted. That skill had helped build every silence she now regretted. The memorial is funded partly by your gift, Commissioner Hale said. Do you wish the dedication to proceed? No. The room stirred. Do you withdraw your contribution? I withdraw my husband's name. Cora Bell rose. Eleanor, surely the board should hear the full statement you prepared. Eleanor looked at her. The day before, Cora had brought a draft to the hotel. It described Amos as forceful but generous, Jacob as tragically misunderstood, and the fire as a confusion born of the difficult conditions of industry. No one would be guilty. No one would be responsible. The fountain could proceed after a small plaque was added honoring all workers. It was a beautiful lie, because it seemed to include everyone. I prepared no statement, Eleanor said. Cora sat. Commissioner Hale frowned. Mrs. Whitcomb, are you asserting that your husband caused the fire? I was not there. Do you believe Mr. Lindholm was innocent? Yes. On what basis? Eleanor could have produced the whistle. Rose had offered it that morning despite herself. Marek had brought the brass tag. Stefan had asked 3 old workers to attend. Instead, Eleanor said, On the word of those I refused to hear. The commissioner waited for more. That is not evidence, he said. No, it is my answer. Your husband's public service is not erased by a disputed industrial accident. Neither is Jacob Lindholm's life restored by a fountain. Murmurs rose. Commissioner Hale tapped the table. If we abandon every memorial because a successful man made enemies, there will be none. Then perhaps stone should be harder to earn. Someone applauded at the back. Eleanor did not turn to see who. I cannot control what the board builds, she continued. I can refuse the use of my money and my presence. I can also say what I should have said 7 years ago. Jacob Lindholm entered that shed to save workers. He warned my husband of danger. My husband used his influence to turn warning into guilt. I chose my husband's certainty over my daughter's truth. Whatever this town decides about Amos, Let no one say Rose left because she was faithless to her family. Her family was faithless to her. The room was completely still. Eleanor had imagined such a confession would feel like falling. It felt like standing without a wall. Commissioner Hale glanced at the other board members. Mr. Marek Kraviec has asked to speak. Marek walked forward. His English became less certain beneath the tension. He told the story in short sentences. Twice, someone laughed quietly at a word he mispronounced. Aneta turned around until the laughter stopped. Marek placed his worker tag on the table. I sign lie because I afraid, he said. Mr. Lindholm lose name. I keep job. 7 years, I say, I feed children. This is true. Also, I feed them with silence. My son go on water when stranger hurt. I want be father who can look him. He stepped back. An old man rose near the wall. Eleanor recognized Owen Cobb, the former foreman. His hands remained curled from the burns. The alarm was tied, he said. Every head turned. Cobb looked at no one. Mr. Whitcomb ordered it, said the spring was faulty. I used baling wire. Lindholm cut it. I tied it again. Commissioner Hale asked, Why have you not said this before? Cobb held up his scarred hands. Because Mr. Whitcomb paid for my treatment. Then he forgave the loan on my house. Gratitude can be another kind of rope. Cora Bell began to cry, not loudly, not for display. Eleanor understood that Cora's father had also worked in the shed. Truth did not divide the room neatly into guilty and innocent. It revealed how many people had been standing on one another's silence. The board voted 4-1 to suspend the memorial. No one cheered. Outside the courthouse, the sky had turned a hard, bright blue. Aneta exhaled. It is done. No, Eleanor said. It is spoken. Different? I hope so. Marek came down the steps beside Stefan. The son took his father's cap and put it on his own head. It was too large. It slipped over one eye. Stefan laughed and returned it. Marek laughed too. Aneta put her arm through both of theirs. Eleanor watched the three walk ahead. For a moment, she envied them. Then she thought of Rose, waiting at the hotel. Not waiting for a report of victory. Waiting to see who her mother would be when the room emptied. The cost arrived before dinner. 2 commercial agents cancelled winter bookings. The bank president resigned from the hotel's board. A supplier in Grand Rapids demanded immediate payment on the new dining chairs. 3 Civic League members sent notes asking that their names be removed from committees on which Eleanor served. Cora Bell sent no note. She came to the hotel in person. Rose was in the lobby for the first time, wrapped in a blue shawl. Peter played beneath the stairs with Stefan. Cora stopped when she saw her. Rose. Mrs. Bell. I am glad you survived. So am I. Cora glanced at Eleanor. May we speak privately? Anything you have to say about me may be said before my daughter, Eleanor replied. It is about the hotel. Then it may be said before the front desk. Cora removed her gloves, finger by finger. My husband has decided the bank cannot extend the spring credit while the business faces uncertainty.
Your husband decided this after the hearing? He believes public controversy may reduce bookings. Will it? I cannot know. You generally know what the town will do before the town does it. Cora flinched. Rose watched both women. Why are you telling me rather than sending Mr. Bell? Cora's eyes filled. Because I am tired of men putting a sentence in my mouth and calling it loyalty. The lobby went quiet. She sat opposite Rose. My father was Owen Cobb. I know, Rose said. Amos paid for his hands. Without that money, we would have lost the house. I know that too. I was 16. I heard my father crying at night because the pain would not stop. Your mother sent food. She found a surgeon in Chicago. I thought the Whitcombs had saved us. And Jacob? Cora looked down at her gloves. I told myself one man taking blame was the price. Then I stopped telling myself anything. It became easier to call you headstrong.
Rose's face was pale but steady.
Do you want my forgiveness?
Cora opened her mouth, then closed it.
Yes,
she admitted.
I do not have it today.
Cora nodded.
I understand.
No, you accept. That is different. Cora absorbed the words.
You are right.
She stood.
I will speak to my husband about the credit. I cannot promise.
Do not ask it as a favor, Eleanor said.
The hotel is sound. Is it?
The question was practical, not cruel. Eleanor looked around the lobby. The carpet still bore a faint water stain from the survivors. One chandelier smoked. A crack had opened in the plaster above Amos's portrait.
Yes,
she said. She hoped it was true. Cora put on her gloves. At the door, she turned to Rose.
I am sorry.
Rose said nothing. Cora left. Peter emerged from beneath the stairs.
Was that asking right?
Rose thought.
It was a beginning.
Eleanor looked at her.
And mine?
Rose pulled the shawl closer.
You have not asked yet.
The words struck more deeply than anything at the courthouse.
I thought, you brought me here. You defended Jacob. You told the truth. Those things needed doing. What else do you require?
Rose's face closed.
There. Require.
She stood too quickly and caught the chair. Eleanor reached for her. Rose pulled away.
I am not a room you can put in order. I did not say you were. You want a list. Confess at courthouse, remove portrait, open door. Then everything is paid. That is not fair. No.
Rose's voice shook.
7 years was not fair.
She turned toward the stairs. Eleanor's own hurt rose, swift and hot.
I cannot undo 7 years.
Rose stopped.
I know. Then what would satisfy you? You still think satisfaction is what I owe you when you do the proper thing.
The staff pretended not to hear. Peter did not pretend. Rose continued more quietly.
I did not come for a public defense of a dead man. I came because my son wanted a grandmother. I came because Jacob died asking me not to carry anger into every house. I came to see whether there could be something between us that was not Amos, fear, or debt.
There can.
You say that as if you own it already.
Rose climbed the stairs. Peter followed. Eleanor stood beneath Amos's portrait. She had been praised all afternoon for courage. Not one person at the courthouse had required her to be patient. Rose did. It was much harder. For 3 days, Eleanor did not ask. She did not explain, defend, or arrange a conversation in the parlor. She ran the hotel. The work had not grown kinder while her family suffered. A pipe froze in room 12. The pastry cook threatened to resign over raisins. A traveling judge refused to pay for a night interrupted by injured sailors, though he had eaten 2 bowls of their soup. Eleanor handled each matter. She also learned to knock at the Red Room. Sometimes Rose invited her in. Sometimes she did not. On Sunday, Peter asked Eleanor to walk with him to the harbor. Rose was sleeping. They took the hill road because Peter's foot remained sore. The town had cleared most storm debris. The beach cart stood again beneath the station awning. Workmen repaired the pier. Beyond them, the wreck of the Morning Star had been pulled free of Cedar Reef and towed to the yard.
The blue lamp still stood in the station window.
"Mrs. Kravick forgot it," Peter said. "She left it."
Why?
"For the next storm."
Peter considered this with the seriousness he gave most things.
Does she know who will need it?
"No."
Then how can it be theirs?
Eleanor looked at the lamp.
"Perhaps some things belong to the person who needs them before that person knows." Peter kicked a pebble.
Papa said machines are easier because every piece belongs somewhere.
Did he think people did not?
He said people spend too long trying to fit the wrong machine.
They walked to the end of the safe portion of pier. The lake was calm. After the violence of the storm, its stillness seemed almost dishonest.
Are you going to send us away?
Peter asked. Eleanor stopped.
No. Mama thinks we should go after Christmas.
The information hurt. She tried not to show it. Your mother has a life in Milwaukee.
We had rooms. Rooms can be a life. Mrs. Kessler says the landlord wants them by January.
Eleanor looked at him.
Your mother did not tell me. She says money makes people hear different.
What does that mean?
I don't know. She told Mrs. Kessler before we left.
Eleanor did know.
If Rose admitted need, every kindness could be turned into rescue. Every invitation could become obligation. Amos had used money as rope. Eleanor had used the hotel as proof that her choices were correct. "Do you want to stay?" she asked. Peter examined the water between the boards.
I want Mama not to cry where she thinks I cannot hear.
Eleanor knelt.
Does she cry at the hotel? No, before, after Papa died.
His lip trembled.
I pretended to sleep because she had nobody.
Eleanor put one hand on his shoulder.
Children are not meant to be the only witness to a parent's grief. I am not a baby. No, that is why you should hear the truth. Your mother was made to carry too much alone. Some of that belongs to me. Can you take it now?
The question was so simple. Eleanor wished the answer were.
I can take my part. Will that make her stop?
No. Peter looked disappointed.
But she may not have to hide.
The station keeper opened the door and waved them inside. Near the window, beneath the blue lamp, stood a new wooden bench. Someone had carved words across its back. Wait here. You need not wait alone. The letters were uneven. Stefan made it, the keeper said. Says the station had too many chairs meant for one person. Peter climbed onto the bench. There was room beside him. Eleanor sat. For a while they watched the calm lake and said nothing. It was not the silence Eleanor had practiced with Amos. That silence had been locked. This one left room.
Martha gave notice on Monday. She placed the envelope on Eleanor's desk after breakfast.
I can remain until the new year, if needed.
Eleanor did not open it.
Why are you leaving? Because I sent Rose away. I told you I might dismiss you. Yes. I have not. That does not mean I should wait until you do.
Martha stood with her hands folded.
She looked older than she had before the storm. Perhaps Eleanor simply saw her now as a woman rather than a function of the house.
Where will you go?
My sister has a farm near Kalamazoo.
You hate chickens.
I do.
And your sister?
Only in winter.
Neither smiled. Eleanor touched the envelope.
Did you apologize to Rose?
I tried.
What did she say?
That she believed me when I said you were not home. She waited at the station 6 hours for the return train. Peter had a fever. She spent the last of her money on a room. Martha's voice broke.
She said she forgave me years ago because, hating the servant, let the house go free.
Eleanor looked up.
And does that comfort you?
No. Good. Martha flinched. I do not mean you must suffer forever, Eleanor said. I mean forgiveness should not become another hiding place. What would you have me do? That is not mine to decide. You are my employer.
For the hotel, yes. Not for your conscience. Martha glanced at the envelope. Will you accept my notice? No. Eleanor, I will give you leave until February. Paid. Go to your sister. Hate her chickens. Decide where you wish to live after that. And if I decide not to return? Then write. You never answer letters.
Eleanor thought of the Christmas card burning in Amos's grate, of a young mother turned from the kitchen, of all the words that had failed to cross this building. I will answer. Martha began to cry. Please stop doing that in my office, Eleanor said. Martha laughed through her tears. Yes, ma'am. At the door she paused. Miss Rose says the portrait should not be removed for her. Eleanor glanced at Amos above the bookcase. Did she? She said a wall changing is easy. She wants to know if the house has. When Martha left, Eleanor stood on the desk chair and lifted the portrait from its hook. It was heavier than expected. She did not burn it. Burning was how her mother had tried to turn a sailor into nothing. It was how Amos had answered news of Peter. Eleanor carried the portrait to the attic. She covered it with cloth and wrote the truth on a card tied to the frame. Amos Whitcomb, 1840 to 1897. My husband. He built this hotel with me. He also used his power to falsely blame Jacob Lindholm for the cannery fire of 1896. I defended his name and abandoned my daughter. Let this portrait remain, but let no one inherit only the praise. She signed her own name. No ceremony marked the act. Dust settled. Downstairs, the pale rectangle above the bookcase remained empty. It was not redemption. It was space in which something truthful might someday hang. The first snow came in early December. Rose could now walk 1 block without resting. Her ribs still pained her when she laughed, so Peter tried to be less funny and failed. She began helping in the hotel sewing room. Eleanor offered no wage at first, afraid money would sound like ownership. Rose worked 2 days, then appeared in the office. Mrs. Vale says the hotel pays outside seamstresses by the piece. It does? Then pay me. You are a guest. I am working. Eleanor opened the cash box. What rate? The same as Aneta. Aneta under charges. Then raise us both. Eleanor looked at her daughter. You may be more dangerous to this hotel than the storm. Jacob said the same thing about pressure. For a second, neither knew whether laughter was allowed. Rose laughed first. She pressed one hand to her ribs. Eleanor laughed too. The sound felt rusty. That afternoon she raised the sewing rate. They did not speak of forgiveness. They spoke of smaller things. Rose disliked the new dining chairs. Eleanor disliked Milwaukee winters. Peter needed better penmanship. The cook put too much nutmeg in custard. Aneta Stefan had begun courting a Finnish fisherman's daughter and combed his hair with enough pomade to waterproof a roof. Small talk did what declarations could not. It made a path over ground neither woman trusted. One evening, Eleanor found Rose in the closed billiard room on the hotel's west side. The room had not been used since Amos died. Dust covered the green baize tables. Deer antlers hung above the cold fireplace. The windows faced the harbor. Rose stood at one of them. Peter says you plan to return to Milwaukee, Eleanor said. Mrs. Kessler stored our things, but she cannot keep the rooms. You could remain here? Rose's shoulders tightened. Eleanor felt the old form of invitation rise. You may stay if you wish. The proud person's invitation. It put all movement on the other. She began again.
I was wrong. Rose turned. I was wrong when I believed Amos because he was my husband.
I was wrong when I let you leave. I was wrong every day I waited for you to make the first return. I cannot give you back Jacob's name before he died, or Peter's first 6 years, or the winter you came to the kitchen. Her voice shook. She allowed it. I am asking you to come home. Not because you are a widow, not because you need rooms, not because I need forgiveness. Please stay while you decide whether this can be home for you again. Rose looked at her for a long time. That is asking right, she said. Relief surged through Eleanor. Rose lifted a hand. It is still only asking. The relief stopped. I know. Do you? I am learning. Rose looked around the billiard room. I cannot live in the red room forever. Choose another. I do not mean the bedroom. Eleanor waited. This hotel is Amos everywhere, Rose said. The men's room no woman enters. His portrait. His rules at the doors. Tradesmen in the alley. Girls dismissed if a guest speaks to them improperly, while the guest stays. Eleanor's face heated. That has happened. Mrs. Vale told me. Why was I not informed? Rose's expression answered. The same question, the same house. What would make it different? Eleanor asked. You own it. I asked what you need. And I am telling you not to make me the architect of your conscience. Eleanor took the rebuke. Rose touched the dusty billiard table. When we waited at the station, there was nowhere for families except the equipment room. They have a new bench. A bench is kind. It is not heat, food, or a bed when a storm lasts 2 days. Eleanor followed her gaze to the harbour windows. This room? It faces the water. It has an outside stair. Families could wait here without being sorted by whether they can pay for a room. You want to make the billiard room a harbour shelter? No. Rose smiled faintly. I am not making your conscience a plan. I am telling you what I saw. She walked to the door. We will stay until spring, she said. Eleanor did not move. After spring? Ask me in spring. Rose left. Eleanor remained beside the window. Snow moved over the harbor in soft white sheets. Until spring was not forever. It was also not no. She had spent years demanding certainty from life because the lake had once taken a man without returning even his coat. Now she accepted a season. Work began on the West Room after Christmas. Eleanor did not announce it at the Civic League. She did not form a memorial committee. She hired 2 carpenters, asked Captain Rusk what families needed, and listened when the hotel laundresses said the outside stair would freeze. They built an enclosed passage from the side street. The billiard tables were sold to a club in Racine. The antlers went to the stable master, who claimed his wife wanted them. No one believed him. The room received a coal stove, 2 long benches, 4 cots, a washstand, and shelves for blankets. The kitchen wall was opened for a service hatch. A bell wire ran to the front desk so families could ask for help at night. Aneta brought the blue lamps. One belongs at station, Eleanor said. Stefan made 3 more boxes. Inside were 6 lamps. Each was blue, but no 2 were exactly alike. One had a green rim, another leaned slightly. A third held tiny bubbles in the glass. Where did you find them? Every house has lamp not used. Widow keeps pair after husband dies. Mother keeps nursery light after children grow. People gave. Eleanor lifted the lamp she'd carried from the station. And what will we call the room? No name. Every room in a hotel has a name or number. Then, not hotel room. Peter, painting a bench badly, looked up. Call it the shore room. Aneta nodded.
Good.
Eleanor took a pencil and wrote it on the carpenter's plan. The shore room. No person's name followed. The bank did not extend spring credit. Cora Bell came with the news herself, as promised.
I argued, she said. Did you vote? Women do not sit on the bank board. Then you did not decide? No.
Cora looked at the unfinished shore room.
It will cost you. Everything appears to. You could delay until summer. Storms do not follow bank calendars.
Cora touched a blue lamp.
My father used to wake screaming when the factory whistle blew.
Eleanor said nothing.
He never told me it was the alarm from the fire,
Cora continued.
I thought it was his hands. Perhaps it was both.
Cora opened her handbag and removed a small envelope.
This is not from the League.
Inside was $60. Eleanor pushed it back.
I do not want charity from the bank president's wife. It is not charity.
It is money from the housekeeping allowance my husband gives me. For 26 years, he has called it mine when he wanted me grateful, and his when I disagreed.
Cora put the envelope on the windowsill.
Today, I am deciding which it is.
Eleanor looked at her old friend. They had spent years speaking about table linen, other women's daughters, church flowers, and the preservation of standards. They had called that closeness.
What should I write in the receipt book? Do not write my husband's name. Yours, then?
Cora shook her head.
Write Owen Cobb.
Eleanor did. Martha returned in February. She came through the front doors carrying one carpet bag and a basket covered in cloth.
Your sister?
Eleanor asked.
Intolerable. The chickens? Better company.
From the basket came a small cluck. Eleanor stared.
You brought a chicken into my lobby.
My sister said I could not keep only the pleasant parts of remorse.
What does the chicken have to do with remorse?
Nothing. She simply wanted me to take it. Peter came running. Within an hour, the chicken had a box in the stable and a name. Commissioner Hale. Martha asked for no old position. She took charge of the shore room linens and the night bell. When Rose needed help cutting new uniforms for the chambermaids, Martha assisted. They worked at the same table. Some days they spoke, some days they did not. Forgiveness was not a bridge crossed once. It was work done within sight of the water. The shore room opened on March 3, 1904. There was no dedication. Captain Rusk inspected the stove. Dr. Pritchard stocked a cabinet with bandages and complained that no one would replace them. Aneta set 2 lamps in the harbor windows. Rose hung a plain sign by the outside door. When the water keeps someone you love, come in. Eleanor read it twice.
It sounds as if they are dead. The water can keep someone for an hour,
Rose said.
Or 7 years,
Aneta added. No ribbon was cut. No newspaper photographer came. At dusk, the cook sent through a pot of stew. No one needed the room that night, nor the next. For 12 days, the lamps remained unlit. Peter used the benches for school lessons. Stefan repaired a cot hinge. Eleanor began to wonder whether she had built an expensive room for her own absolution after all. On the 13th night, the bell rang at 1:20 in the morning. A fishing boat named Agnes May was overdue with 4 men aboard. The first person through the outside door was a girl of 17 carrying a sleeping baby.
My husband is on the boat,
she said. Her coat was too thin. One shoe had no laces. Eleanor had seen her before at the fish market, but did not know her name.
Come to the stove. I cannot pay. There is no charge. My mother said hotels always charge.
Your mother is generally correct. Not tonight. The girl remained by the door. Her eyes moved over the clean cots, blankets, and polished floor. Poor people often mistrusted fine rooms because fine rooms had rules they learned only after breaking. Eleanor took off her own shoes. The girl stared. Eleanor placed them beneath a bench and sat in her stockings. There. Now neither of us is properly dressed for a hotel. The girl almost smiled. What is your name? Elsie Nystrom. And your husband? Carl. Sit, Elsie. She did. More families arrived. Aneta came from 2 streets away with her scarf tied over uncombed hair. Martha rang the kitchen. Rose brought Peter downstairs, wrapped in a quilt because he refused to remain in bed. At 2, Captain Rusk sent word that the Agnes May had lost her rudder but remained afloat south of the harbor. At 3, a tug reached her. At 4:10, the men came through the shore room door, cold and furious with the lake. Elsie placed her baby in Eleanor's arms and ran to Carl. Eleanor held the child while husband and wife clung to each other. Peter stood beside the lamp shelf. We did not light them, he said. In the activity, everyone had forgotten. Eleanor looked at the 6 blue lamps. Perhaps we did not need to. Aneta shook her head. Not for water. For shore. She lit one lamp and handed the match to Peter. He lit the second. Blue light filled the harbor windows as dawn came. Elsie returned for her baby. Thank you, she whispered. Eleanor gave the child back. The room was here. You were too. The words stayed with her after the families left. She had spent much of her life confusing provision with presence. A house, a school, a surgeon's fee, a clean room kept locked. The room was here. You were too. Both mattered. Neither excused the absence of the other. In April, the last ice disappeared from the gutters. Bellweather became mud, gulls, and arguments about spring paint. Rose had promised an answer. Eleanor did not remind her. This restraint was so visible that even Peter noticed. You are waiting loudly, he told her at breakfast. I have not said a word. That is why. Rose hid a smile behind her cup. 2 days later, she asked Eleanor to walk with her. They went down Cedar Street past the Lutheran church and the Cooper's yard. Rose stopped before a narrow yellow house with a bay window and a maple tree. A sign in the glass read, To Let. Mrs. Nystrom's uncle owns it, Rose said. There are 3 rooms downstairs and 2 above. Eleanor looked at the peeling trim. The roof sags. Stefan says the rafters are sound. The north windows will freeze. Aneta knows a glazier. The kitchen is too small. For a hotel, perhaps. Eleanor understood. You are leaving. Rose faced her. I am staying in Bellweather, but leaving the hotel. I cannot learn whether I want a mother while living in a room she gives me. I would never use the room against you. Rose raised an eyebrow. Eleanor heard herself. Never was another form of certainty, another promise life could force into a lie. I do not want to, she corrected. I know. Can you afford this? Aneta and I have orders for the summer season. The showroom has shown half the town she can sew better than the department store in Grand Rapids. And you? I can cut patterns. I can also repair steam gauges. Eleanor stared. Rose laughed. Jacob taught me. Do not look so frightened. I am thinking of what the Civic League will do when it learns my daughter repairs machinery. Cora has already asked me to inspect the League Hall boiler. They both laughed. Then the laughter passed. Eleanor looked at the house again. When will you move? May 1st. May I pay the deposit? No. May I buy the stove? No. May I send over the bed from the red room? Rose hesitated. Peter likes that bed. Then it is his. Not as an inheritance. As a bed. Yes. Eleanor nodded. It hurt to give Rose room to leave.
For years, she had imagined reunion as a return to the place before the injury. Rose in the red room, Peter beneath her roof. Every missing year somehow folded away. But a living daughter was not a piece of furniture to be restored to its former position. "The maple needs pruning," Eleanor said. "When you show me." Eleanor looked at her. "Yes." Rose took a key from her pocket and opened the yellow door. "Come see the kitchen." It was too small. It was also bright. They stripped the red room together, not all at once. First, the old dress went to Aneta, who salvaged the lace and turned the silk into a christening bonnet for Elsie Nystrom's baby. The porcelain dogs went to Peter. He painted one black and the other blue. Rose opened the Tennyson and found pressed violets inside. They crumbled when touched. She did not cry. The wallpaper was last. Eleanor had assumed Rose would want it preserved. Instead, she took the scraper from the workman and slid its blade beneath a row of swallows. The paper came away in long strips. "I thought you loved the birds," Eleanor said. "I did. Peter talks of them as if they are the room. Because I made them into a story. That does not mean they must stay on the wall forever." She found one bird with both wings intact and cut a square around it. "For the yellow house? For you." Rose placed the square in Eleanor's hand. The swallow faced left. "Which way is it flying?" Eleanor asked. "That depends where you stand." Rose returned to the wall. Beneath the paper, pencil marks climbed one side of the doorframe. Rose, age 6. Rose, age 8. Rose, age 11. The last mark read, Rose, 15, followed by Amos's impatient handwriting. "Enough of this." Eleanor touched it. "He said you were too old to measure. He said growing was not an achievement." I laughed. I remember. The room held still around them. "I am sorry," Eleanor said. Rose leaned the scraper against the wall. "I know." It was the first time she had accepted the words without adding a boundary. Eleanor did not reach for her. Rose stepped closer on her own. For a moment, mother and daughter stood face to face. Then Rose put her forehead against Eleanor's shoulder. Eleanor closed her arms around her. Rose was no longer small. Her body had known work, birth, hunger, marriage, widowhood, and cold water. Eleanor could not hold her as she had at 5. She held the woman who had survived without her. Neither said forgiveness. Some words were too easily mistaken for endings. On May 1st, Rose and Peter moved to Cedar Street. The hotel wagon carried the bed, 2 chairs, a table, a sewing machine, Peter's painted dogs, and 6 boxes of household goods. Eleanor sent no items that had not been requested. At the Yellow House, Peter chose the upstairs room facing the lake. He hung the wooden swallow above his bed. The brass whistle went on a shelf beside Jacob's tools, recovered from the wreck and cleaned of rust by Stefan. Rose kept the wallpaper bird in the kitchen until Eleanor insisted it had been given away. Then Rose framed it and hung it in the Whitcomb house office. It faced the door, or the window, depending of where one stood. Eleanor visited on Sunday afternoons. The first time she arrived 20 minutes early and corrected the placement of the parlor rug. Rose asked her to leave and return at the agreed hour. Eleanor did. The second time, she brought a pie the French cook had made and allowed Rose to believe she had baked it for almost 3 minutes. The third time, Peter called her grandmother in front of the neighbors. Eleanor looked away, because joy, like grief, could make a person greedy if watched too closely. Summer brought travelers back to the Whitcomb house. Some old guests did not return. New ones did. Engine men from Milwaukee booked 6 rooms after hearing how Eleanor had spoken for Jacob.
Families from the ore boats stayed because the shoreroom welcomed them when schedules failed. 2 women's clubs cancelled luncheons. 3 others booked meetings out of curiosity and returned for the custard. The hotel did not collapse. It changed. Tradesmen began using the front door. Chambermaids, who complained of guests, were heard by a committee that included 2 chambermaids.
The men's billiard room never returned. Cora Bell remained president of the Civic League, though by a narrow vote. She and Rose were not friends. On certain Tuesdays, they repaired hospital linens at the same table. Sometimes that was the more honest achievement. Marek found work maintaining the new ice plant. Owen Cobb came to the shore room once and sat beneath the lamps for an hour without speaking. He left his foreman's key on the sill. No one knew what to do with it. Aneta put it in a drawer marked, "Things not yet light enough to throw away." The harbor board melted down Amos's bronze plaque. The metal was recast into a plain bell for the life-saving station. Around its rim were the words, "For those who go out and those who keep the shore." No name was larger than another. At the first test, Captain Rusk let Peter pull the rope. The bell rang across the water. Peter said it sounded nothing like the factory whistle. Rose stood with one hand on his shoulder. Eleanor stood beside her. "Do you want Jacob's whistle displayed here?" Captain Rusk asked. Peter looked at his mother. Rose let him answer. "No," he said. "That one is ours." He had learned the truth did not always require surrendering the last private thing to public view. They carried it home. 1 year after the Morning Star storm, the lake turned black again. Not as violent, not as cold, but enough to keep 2 schooners beyond the harbor after dark. Families gathered in the shoreroom. The cook sent stew through the hatch. Martha laid blankets on the cots. Aneta trimmed the lamps. Rose came from Cedar Street with Peter, who was taller and claimed not to remember ever being 6. Near midnight, a woman arrived alone. She wore a fine sealskin coat and a hat pinned perfectly in place. She gave her name as Mrs. Ada Mercer of Chicago. Her son served as purser on one of the schooners. "I require a private room," she told Eleanor. "All the bedrooms are occupied. I will pay whatever is necessary. This room is for waiting." Mrs. Mercer looked at the fishermen's wives, the sleeping children, and Marek Kraviek's pouring tea. "I cannot remain here." Eleanor recognized the voice. Not the woman, the voice. It was the sound of fear dressed as rank. "You may wait in the hotel lobby if you prefer," Eleanor said. "But news comes here first." Mrs. Mercer gripped the handle of her bag. "My son and I quarreled before he left Chicago." The words surprised her. They seemed to escape through a tear in the coat of dignity. "He asked me to bless his engagement. The girl works in a music shop. Her father repairs shoes." Eleanor said nothing. "I told him not to return unless he came alone." The room continued around them. A child coughed, a kettle lid rattled, wind pressed rain against the glass. "And now?" Eleanor asked. "Now I would give anything to take back the last thing he heard from me." Eleanor looked toward the 6 blue lamps. Only 2 were lit. She chose one with bubbles trapped in the glass and placed it on the table beside Mrs. Mercer. "What is this?" "Something to keep while you wait." "I do not need a lamp." "Neither did I." Mrs. Mercer stared at the flame. "Did your child come back?" Eleanor saw Rose across the room. Her daughter had heard. "Yes," Eleanor said, "but not because I deserved it." Mrs. Mercer sat. Eleanor sat on the other side of the table. For a long time, the woman said nothing. Then her grip loosened on the bag. "Her name is Alice," she whispered. "The girl from the music shop." "What does she play?" "Violin."
Is she good? My son says so. Then perhaps you should hear her.
Mrs. Mercer gave a wet, unwilling laugh.
If he comes back.
Eleanor looked at the lamp.
When he comes back, do not ask him to pretend you were never cruel. Ask whether he will let you be different next.
Did that work for you?
Eleanor looked at Rose again. It is working.
At 2 a.m, the bell rang from the station. Both schooners had been sighted. One had torn a sail, the other had lost deck cargo. No lives were lost. Mrs. Mercer began to cry. Eleanor remained beside her. She did not say everything was well. A son's survival would not mend the words already spoken. Mourning would still require humility. She simply stayed. When the purser came through the shore room door, wet and exhausted, his mother did not wait for him to cross the room. She went to him. Eleanor looked away. Some reunions deserved privacy even in a crowded room. Years passed. The lake kept its habits. It glittered in summer, lied in autumn, froze at the edges in winter, and frightened people who believed they had learned it.
The shore room kept its lamps. One cracked. Aneta wrapped it in wire and said a mended light was still a light. One went home with a woman whose brothers were missing for 3 days. She returned it with a new lamp beside it. One was sent to Milwaukee after a factory collapse. No one knew who sent it back. The shelf was never empty. Peter grew. At 12, he began helping at the boatyard. At 14, he designed a new release for the rescue basket after remembering how the old one had twisted above the waves. At 16, he announced he would study mechanical engineering. Eleanor offered to pay. Peter asked for a loan. She was offended for half a day. Then she wrote terms that allowed no obedience as interest. Rose and Aneta opened a workroom on Cedar Street. They made shirtwaists, repaired hotel linen, and inspected small steam fittings for businesses whose owners had learned it was foolish to laugh at women who knew pressure. Rose never moved back to the Whitcomb house. She came through its front doors without knocking. That was better. Martha remained until her knees made stairs impossible. Then she moved into the yellow house's downstairs room, where she complained of Rose's tea and spoiled Peter without secrecy. Cora Bell's husband never apologized. Some people did not become good because truth had entered the room. He avoided Eleanor at church and died believing the bank had been right. Cora used part of her widow's settlement to fund night classes for factory girls. She never called the gift redemption. Rose respected her for that. Eleanor stopped wearing the jet brooch. She kept it in the same attic drawer as Owen Cobb's key. Things not yet light enough to throw away. In November 1912, 9 years after the morning star, Eleanor woke before dawn to the sound of the shore room bell. She was 61. Silver had replaced the iron gray in her hair. Her knees objected to the stairs, and Peter had begun taking her arm without asking. She dressed and went down. Only one person waited in the room. A young woman sat near the stove in a coat buttoned wrong. One side hung lower than the other. Her hands were clasped so tightly that the nails marked her skin. Eleanor knew the look. "Who is on the water?" she asked. "My sister, the ferry from Manitowoc." Fog had closed the harbor. The ferry whistle sounded far beyond the pier, then fell silent. "Has the fog kept her before?" The woman nodded. Eleanor went to the shelf. 2 lamps stood ready. She lit both. One she placed in the harbor window, the other she set on the chair between them. "Why 2?" the woman asked. Eleanor drew a second chair near the stove, close enough that quiet would not feel empty. "One for the person who is away, one for the person who must remain." "Which is harder?" Eleanor looked through the blue glass. In its light, she saw a station in a storm, a soaked boy in an oilskin coat, Rose beneath the backward birds, Amos's empty place on the wall, the yellow house,
a woman from Chicago learning to say Alice. She also saw Aneta's steady hands placing a lamp into hers when she had not yet earned kindness and did not know how to ask for it. "It changes," Eleanor said. The young woman stared at the window. "I do not know how to wait." "Neither did I." "What do I do?" "For now, keep the lamp lit." "And after?" Eleanor loosened one wrongly fastened button on the woman's coat and placed it through the proper hole. "After, if you find someone alone in the dark, sit near them." The fairy whistle sounded again, closer. The young woman reached for the blue lamp. Her hand still trembled, but the flame did not go out. Outside, fog covered the harbor, and the future remained unseen. Inside, 2 lights burned, one for the water, one for the shore, and neither burned alone.